All right, so I'm going to explain dating and why it's basically fallen apart, and it's a lot more challenging today than it was for my parents and older generations. You could sum it all up with just the internet. The internet is the sum of everything, right? It's made life a lot easier for information and for communication, but it's given people the idea of endless options, right? With Tinder and Bumble and all these dating sites where you can endlessly swipe. You can set filters on who you want to match with and their height and how much money they make and, what color hair they have and all these things that just whittle down the pool of potential candidates. Before, you if you grew up in a city or a town, you had that a couple hundred people that were of your age range maybe that you went to school with, and you were kind of expected to get married almost kind of early on in your life, which now is not the case. So instead of being around a network of like 1,000 people maybe, now with the internet you have access to essentially an unlimited amount of people. And the when you give people options, they don't ever want to choose anything because uh, they're worried that they might make the wrong decision, right? Well, I don't want to commit to this person because that person might be better. That person might be taller. That other guy might make more money. That other guy is better at, whatever, doing things for me. He's better in bed or whatever it is, right? All these different things that they don't want to commit to anyone. It's not to say that no one commits. I mean, people still do get married. People still do have kids. But the traditional concept of getting married at a younger age and then staying married for a long time, it used to be bad to get divorced. It used to be looked down upon. It used to be bad to have kids out of marriage when you weren't married. Now it's over 50% of marriages end in divorce. There's I was watching a chart of the amount of kids that are born out of wedlock, and it's just like a complete. It's going up incredibly fast, right? It used to be really, really low, and now I forget what the percentage was, but it's way higher than it was 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So the internet's the reason for that. And, like I've said in other videos, when you have basically when you have gender roles and then you just throw them away, basically no one really needs each other anymore. Men, well, I shouldn't start with men. Women don't need men, and they've made that incredibly clear, right? I don't need you. I can get my own job. I don't want you to tell me what I have to do. I want to make my own money and do my own thing. Which, if you just take a step back, it's kind of a positive thing, really, because certainly there were some women that were in bad relationships. They felt like they couldn't leave because if they left, they'd be shamed. If they left, they wouldn't have another man that would want to be with them. Publicly, it was bad. Financially, they maybe didn't have recourse. But now it's completely shifted where men now don't want to get married because they fear, well, she could divorce me for anything. I'm going to be financially, on the hook, and I'm just not going to play in that field, right? Because it's like playing Russian roulette with it's not like the gun's empty. The gun has a bullet in it. You don't want to play Russian roulette with that, right? But positive for women in the sense that, hey, more women are working, they're more equal, they make more money, they're not reliant on men, they're not forced, publicly or societally to get into a relationship with a man. So that's, I guess, a positive. It can be viewed as both. But the result, I'm not going to say it's a positive or negative. I'm just going to say that the result of that is less people getting married, women's standards going way higher than they ever have been before, thanks to the internet, thanks to dating apps, to social media. Basically, any girl who goes online can get a crazy amount of attention or validation from men, because men will give it out. And in the past, they didn't get that. But now everyone's getting it. So now all women, or most women, think that they're too good to get with an equally, maybe an equally successful guy, or an equal, if a guy is a decent looking guy and a woman's a decent looking gal, the woman probably doesn't want to be with the guy because she sees all these other people, these other better looking guys that are giving her attention online. And so she doesn't want to cash her chips in to settle down with what she views to be an average guy. Now, if you're a third person just looking at these two people, you'd say, well, this is an average guy and this is an average girl, but the girl doesn't want to be with the guy, right? Because she's getting all this interest from other people. So the relationship never happens. The marriage doesn't happen. There's not kids that are coming out of it. Women are delaying getting married because they don't have to anymore. And that's the reason, right? So women don't want to date men that they view as being beneath them. They don't want to date men that make less money. They don't want to date men that are equally as good looking as them, because they always want people that are better than them. It's not that they won't, it's just that if they think that they have access to better men that they view, in terms of, this guy makes more money, this guy drives a better car, this guy has a house, this guy is taller, this guy has better hair, this guy, the list is endless. They will not want to settle down, or they'll just play games with the guy that is giving them attention, because they know they have a bullpen of basically men that they view as higher value. Now, none of those guys that are actually higher value want to be with the girls. So it's kind of like you're riding a bicycle and you see the guy driving a car, and you're envious of the guy driving the car. And then the guy driving the car sees a guy driving a nicer car, and he's envious of that guy driving the nicer car, right? It's like no one really wants to just be happy with where they are. They want to think that there's always a better option, and I never have to settle down. And that's why no one's settling down. Now, I think if you really asked most men, they would say, well, I'm just looking for someone that I'm attracted to. It doesn't necessarily mean she has to be a supermodel. She doesn't have to have all of these features. Most men would probably say, well, I'd prefer that she'd be not incredibly overweight or not overweight, and I'm attracted to her, and that we get along. And that's it. Nothing else. Not a requirement on your height, not a requirement specifically on your weight, just that you're proportional. I don't care about what your income is. I don't care about what car you drive. I don't care if you have a job. I really don't care if you have a job. I mean, whatever. I already know that you're going to be, or that I'm going to be probably the main person in terms of a job. If you have a job, great. But I'm certainly not going to hold that. I'm not going to hold what your occupation is against you. If I get along with you, I'm attracted to you. And I mean, that's essentially it. Flip the tables. What are women looking for now? They're naturally hardwired to want, men that are going to provide for them. So they are looking at, what do you do for work? How do you dress? What car do you drive? That all factors in. They might not necessarily ask you how much money you make, but they can infer, what you do and how successful you are and everything like that based on, your clothing, the way you act, the things you say, the vocabulary you're using, the car you're driving, how you speak. All these things are signals to them. But even if you are, let's say, just take me for example. I'm 5'10". I'm probably average looking, or maybe even beneath average, but I'm in decent shape. I'm 165 pounds, so I'm certainly not overweight. But I would say I'm average looking, or maybe even beneath average looking, because, and why do I say that? I'm not saying that because I'm trying to say I'm better or worse than average. I'm just saying I'm probably average or beneath average in terms of just looks. I say that because I don't get approached by women. Okay, I never really have. maybe I'd say less than 5 times in my life have I really been approached by women that were interested in me. It just doesn't happen. Now I know it doesn't happen for even pretty good looking men, but it just doesn't happen in general for guys. So be that as it may, we just don't get approached, right? So women just they're not coming out of the woodwork to want to talk to me. They really don't do that to guys that they would deem good looking. But because, let's say that I'm successful though. I could drive a nice car, I could make a lot of money, I could be doing really well for myself. No woman would really ever know, right? Especially if I'm not flaunting that. They just take a look at me. I wear normal clothes. Most of the time I'm wearing clothes from like Costco. They don't have any labels on them really most of the time. I drive a totally average car. I have 2 cars. One of them's a complete beater and the other one's average. So I'm not going to stand out in any way. Now I prefer it that way, but even if all those things were great, like even if I drove a nice car and I made a lot of money and I was outgoing with a great personality, they still would look at you and say, well, you're just not that attractive, or you're not tall enough, or you don't have enough hair, or you're not good in bed, or you're not XYZ, right? It's always going to be something else. So that's why I think they don't ever really want to settle down, because they see the internet with the world of all these options. This guy is a Olympic sprinter, and this guy has a 6-pack, and he makes millions of dollars a year, and he drives a fancy car. And so that, that's the crazy thing that I was thinking about. Us as men, we don't hold out for that. If we find a woman that we get along with and we're attracted to them, that's good enough. I think for most guys, you would ask most guys, like, they just want someone they can get along with, and they're not looking to get Angelina Jolie and someone that plays basketball like Brittany Griner and someone that, sings like, I don't know, Cher, and all these things mixed into one person, right? You just take the best of every single person and you wait until you get that in one person. Guess what? You're going to be waiting your entire life. That's why you get older, especially for women, they get older and they realize, I don't have the same value that I once had. So now if I want to be with anyone, I have to incredibly lower my standards, like drastically, because they were literally up in Mars or in the stratosphere, way up there. And the reality is, the type of guy that they're interested in doesn't want anything to do with them. And even a guy that they would deem average or beneath average probably wants nothing to do with them. So it's an incredibly humbling experience for women as they get older. Guys, like I've always said in other videos, guys have it hard when they're young because they have nothing to offer. Women are going to naturally be drawn towards guys that can show them, that are a little more polished, can have a little bit of money to spend on them, to do things for them, buy them things, take them places, go to dinner, etc. Right? Younger guys just really can't compete. And so guys tend to do a little bit better as they get older. But for women, it's brutal, because when you're young, a lot of these women really think that they're just great. They don't know that it's really just because of the way they look. It's like, hey, you're young, you're hot, and you have a nice body. And so, and you're let's just say you're maybe not a total bitch. So people will want to hang out with you, and they want to be around you because you're fun. You don't have a bunch of baggage. You're not emotionally a train wreck. You're not going to argue over everything. But as women get older, a lot of that can change, meaning they're not as good looking when typically someone that's 20 years old is going to be better looking than someone that's 30. Okay. You're going to have a job now. You're going to have a bunch of opinions on the way that things should be. You're not going to be as fun to hang out with. You're going to have a bunch of requirements on the type of people that you even want to hang out with. Your life gets a lot more serious, and most guys are just looking for a good time, right? So you as they get older, they're shrinking the amount of men that are going to want anything to do with them. And not to, like I already said, physically, you're always competing with younger people. So the type of guy that all the women want, the guy that's 30 or 35, that's successful, that's good looking, that's tall, that drives a nice car, that provides the woman with a bunch of experiences and gifts and all these things. Every single woman wants that guy, right? So as a guy, why would you want the 30-year-old version of someone when you could get the 25-year-old version of that woman, right? The 25-year-old's probably better looking. Maybe the 30-year-old has kids, right? She has 1 or 2 kids. The 25-year-old doesn't. The 30-year-old has a job in HR, and she's incredibly opinionated about all these social issues, and she wants to talk about that all the time, and she wants to tell you how your opinion's wrong. The 25-year-old doesn't really give a shit. She has maybe an opinion, but she's open to have a conversation, and you don't get heated about it, right? She's not going to say you're an idiot for thinking something a certain way, right? And so men naturally are not going to want to be with that. Oh, and they look different, right? So most men, maybe the 30-year-old is 20 pounds heavier, and doesn't look as good as a 25-year-old, okay? But women don't realize that. It's almost like they just think they're always great, right? They don't actually just look at themselves and say, what do I actually offer to the other party, right? Now, I know my own situation. I have no chance with someone that I can't get to know, right? Because if someone looks at me, again, I have 30 years of experience of this as just a guy. I know that most men don't get approached, but I have 30 years of experience of being in thousands of different situations with women and men. I mean, just in public situations. Women don't ever approach me. Women don't ever want to get to know me more. Women don't, flirt basically ever with me. And if anything's going to happen, I'm going to have to go do it. I think that's true for most men, even if you're a good-looking guy, even if you're way above average and you dress nice and all these things. You're probably not going to get a bunch of female attention, like complete, where they're coming up and wanting to spend time with you and get to know you more. That just doesn't happen as much now. Again, especially because of the internet, people are just kind of in their own worlds. They got their AirPods on and they're just tuned out. They don't really want to talk to you. But it doesn't happen, right? But if I go other places, even just average women can get a bunch of guys wanting to hang out with them or do things with them. So they think that they're just this great. They think that they're just so popular and they have all these options. But the sad part for them is that none of those, especially as they get older, none of those, their ideal man or their ideal partner, they want nothing to do with them, right? Those guys don't ever want to settle down. The guys that have the options of any woman. There's some guys, because of the way they look, because of the way they dress, because of their just attraction to women, that they can have any woman they want. So they are almost never going to settle down with a woman, especially a woman who's 30, over 30, is kind of more masculine, is maybe potentially overweight, very strong opinions. They're just not going to, they probably won't even really date you or even have a hookup, I would say. Some of them might, but a lot of them are just going to be like, well, I can go talk to 3 other women and with like 5 minutes of work, I can go hang out with them, right? So they have so many options. All that being said, that was just a big ramble session about dating and the internet and how it's changed things. All that being said, nothing's going to change, I don't think, because the internet has ruined it. For better or worse, it is what it is. Men and women have become more commoditized. We're both kind of the same now. And I totally agree that there's a lot of men that are way less masculine, but that's just society. And there's a lot of women that are way less feminine. They expect men to do all these traditional things maybe, but they don't want to be held to the same feminine standard. So it's I don't think it's going to change really. Women women, it's just common sense. As women enter the workforce, they make more money, they're pushing men down. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying it's a reality. As women rise, men decline. That is what's known as a zero-sum game. You can't just raise everyone's tides, right? If more women are making more money, it almost certainly means that a larger percentage of men are making less money. And when you have women who basically only want to associate in a relationship with men who make more money and who are pretty good looking, there's a huge pool of men who are not even going to be considered for any sort of relationship or any sort of dating because they just don't qualify, right? The woman doesn't need them anymore for a relationship, for money, for anything, because they're strong, independent. And the guy doesn't have motive. Why is he gonna go out? Why is he gonna go, bust his ass and make more money? He doesn't have a family. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have a woman who's providing any value to him. So he just kind of does the bare minimum, and he's a loner. And that's the way things are going. So women, they're getting more success in their career. They're allocating more time to their job, but they're not happy. And men, there's a large pool of men who are just saying, well, I guess I would like a girlfriend or maybe a wife, but these girls are crazy. They're showing no interest in me. They're going to judge me based on all these things that I can't really control. And, probably most men feel invisible because they just probably have next to no interaction with women. And as a guy, like, let's just be honest. You take me, if I go up and talk to a girl, basically any woman, I could have the cops called on me, because you just never know how the woman's going to react. She might think you're creepy. She might think you're trying to hit on her. She might say, what are you doing? So it's like a landmine. It's like walking into a field of mines. Guys see stuff that happens on the internet, and they're like, I don't even want to approach women because I don't know what's going to happen. They're going to accuse me of stuff. Certainly not going to do it at work. Probably not going to do it in public where there's cameras. So people are just choosing not to play the game. You didn't get punished in the past for taking a chance and failing. But now, if you take a chance and fail, in terms of asking a girl out or saying something or flirting, you could lose your job. You could be publicly shamed. You could, go to jail, potentially. There's a lot of things that could happen to you. If you were a good-looking guy and you said the same thing, the woman might not have a problem with it. But if they deem you to be not attractive, they're going to see it as creepy. And the outcome's going to be different. The good-looking guy might get a date or hook up with the gal. The bad-looking guy or the average-looking guy might get the police called. So when that's the rules that you're playing by, it's just not a good game to play. So guys are just saying, I'm not playing that game. I'm going to go play Fortnite. Or I'm going to go play Battlefield or whatever. Because, I can't really get hurt in that world. And you've seen that too. People are living in their own world. So let me know what you think. I'm rambling at this point. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day. Subscribe if you want. I don't care. And see you on the next one.